It's Lisa here on VL Speaks. This is episode 42. And the topic of this episode is self-esteem. And the reason I wanted to address this specifically is due to conversations that I've been having with people about their children who are now teenagers and what they're dealing with in high school and going into high school, and also dealing with social media. And this has been talked about before, how people compare themselves to people that they see on social media and they wind up getting super depressed and thinking, my goodness, I'm not worthy. But really, is that real life? Who knows? So this is what prompted me to come to this. And I think it's important because a lot of people have been talking about feeling lonely and disconnected and also afraid because of all the things that's happening in the world right now. And that can make you feel uncertain about yourself as well. Like, are you going to make it? Can you make it? Do you have the strength to do this? And self-esteem comes into play when we start asking ourselves these questions. Self-esteem is directly correlated to what's going on in our minds, right? The brains are the hardware, the minds are the software. And we're constantly programming it subconsciously, whether we know it or not. And everything that's being thrown at us also plays a part unless you're really conscious about what you're taking in and how you're processing it. So self-esteem has to do with how we value ourselves and how we perceive ourselves. Okay. And it starts from the time that we're very small. What are our parents like? What are relationships with siblings like or other people in the family? What is the messaging that is being received and given through these formative years when we're very young, growing up into teenagers and then being, when I was younger, we didn't have social media, but that doesn't mean that teenage girls didn't compare themselves to other teenage girls that they saw in magazines or on TV or in our classrooms or our group of friends. It was happening, and also when I grew up, we still had a lot, not that there is now, but we still had a lot of blatant misogyny and sexism growing up. So that plays a part in how females perceive themselves and also how males were told how to grow up, right? And what was perceived as being weak or strong. So all of this messaging starts from a very young age and it has changed generationally. And when we all come together, it sets us up for some really interesting situations. All right. So let's start with the contributing fact. I already gave you the contributing factors of what helps us to establish this sense of self-esteem. It starts in the mind, and then it becomes within your smaller community, reaching out to a larger community, and then we all get mashed up in here, and then we got to start figuring stuff out. So I would like you to get your journal. Hopefully you watched episode 41. I'd like you to get your journal out, and I'd like to get you to get your favorite pen if you got one. And I want you to answer these questions. This is for you. I have no idea how you're answering them, and I don't know if you're watching this with someone else, but do a little self-analysis here. Self-analysis is a really good thing to do. It's a good way to check in with yourself and be honest with yourself about things. And also, this is not about judgment or criticism. This is about you gaining access to who you are, because how you relate to yourself is really important. Okay. It trickles out into the world. So let's start with some questions. Okay. If you want to close your eyes while I'm putting out these questions so that you can really kind of go in, do that. So I would say first, check in with what is your self-talk like? How do you speak to yourself? When you're in a difficult situation, what are you saying to yourself? Write down just a gist of what it is that you're saying to yourself. How do you speak to other people? How do you find yourself speaking to other people when you're in conversation or if things get tense or stressful? How are you speaking to other people? because that says a lot about how you speak to yourself, believe it or not. Not always the case. There are some people that can be very sweet to people on the outside, and then when they're having this internal conversation, they are beating themselves up. That also happens. Just think about it. And how you answer that also is going to answer some of the questions in the future. Like, how good are you at saying no? Are you the person that's constantly saying yes to everyone around you? Okay. That gives you an indication of what your boundaries are like. All right. Moving forward, moving forward. What does your circle of friends look like? And the dynamic of you in that circle of friends. Where are you in that dynamic? How would you describe your friendships with the people that you consider to be close to you? Okay. Okay. Next, moving on. What do you eat on a regular basis? And how do you feel after you've eaten? If there is a difficult situation, do you find yourself continually blaming yourself unfairly for why it went wrong? Are you able to look at yourself objectively and say, oh, yeah, no one's perfect, right? And do you like yourself? Do you like what you see? Okay. Alrighty. So, a few other things in regards to self esteem that I want to touch on is choices for coping mechanisms. And so, the most obvious in our culture is alcohol and drugs. And it's not just weed, that seems to be the mildest of what's going on right now. I mean, there are people on drugs that are helping them cope with depression because they're not necessarily getting into what the issues are, right? Mental illness or mental health issues aside, if you're masking if you're masking issues with drugs, then it's hard for you to get to the root of things. And therapy is important if you especially if you feel that you need it. But there are people that are using pharmaceutical drugs to drown out whatever's going on in there, which can then cause more problems later, right? Can really start to cause chemical imbalances as if they're doing that. So that's something that you want to look at. Are you abusing that? Do you have situations with food where you find yourself either binging and throwing up or just not eating at all? Because these things are usually got the tendrils of low self esteem wrapped around it. Okay. And then also, what I've noticed is that people that have been bullied sometimes turn to bullying to help them feel better about themselves. Isn't that you? Or are you the kind of person that attracts those kind of people because your self esteem is low? So then you got two people that have low self esteem in this little hamster wheel doing an unhealthy dance. Okay. And then also, what I've noticed with some folks is hoarding stuff. They think that if they have more stuff, that this is somehow going to give them a sense of feeling better about themselves, more being more important because they've got all this stuff. You know, they've got all this stuff that they're accumulating, and then that somehow lends itself to you having healthier sense of self and better self-esteem. So those are some things to think about. I know I went there. It's important. We've all got to do this work. There's no getting around it. Not if you want to be a healthy, integrated, happy, joyful person, because that's the key, right? That's the whole point of this, is to have a healthier lifestyle. So the mind, the most powerful tool that we possess, and our bodies, obviously, this is a work of art, the body. The body, the way that it can thrive, no matter how much stuff we throw at it, and it can still stay alive and function, even if it's not at the highest level, is quite miraculous. Can we just say that? Can we just put that out there? That being alive is a miraculous thing. Having this life to live is a huge gift, like monumental. I don't know why we don't have like a being alive holiday. Like, just be happy that you made it through, that you're here, that you got the chance to live. When I think of that, it really just changes my perspective about everything. If I'm in a bad mood and I start writing, I am happy to be alive. I did this whole practice in the last episode 41 on journaling, on just being thankful to be alive, just for that, like, got this life. That alone is a huge shift in consciousness. So the healthy self-esteem is connected to that higher mind when we gain access to that, right? You need some level of discernment to get to that place where you can go, okay, so snapping out of some of these habits here, because this is habit, these are thoughts first, and then they become habits in life. Know this. When you come to that place, it's not like, maybe some people miraculously are able to jump from one state of being to another, but everybody that I know has had to go through a progression. And some people move at a faster clip than others. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Again, we're not interested in comparing. It's not a comparing game here. Like Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. So this is strictly about you and what's going on with you. When you get to that point where you have a healthier way of thinking and perceiving, and raise the state of your values, right? Your values become much higher, in the sense that, well, they're higher because you're going to be feeling better. You're like on a higher vibration, if you want to call it that. All right. I'm not going to dawdle there too much. So what does that discernment look like? Knowing what's true and false. Knowing what is absolutely true for you, within you, I think is where it starts, right? Getting rid of the clutter and the confusion is going to help with this. So you can see what your strengths are. You can see what your weaknesses are, and you can speak to your strengths and use your strengths to help you overcome your weaknesses. Here, we're developing a better sense of self-esteem. We're making our way over to the other end of the spectrum. You prefer healthier choices, right? Because you're looking at how you feel after you eat that, or you drink that, or you do this particular habit, and you decide, I feel much better when I do this. And hence, you feel better, you start to think better. Right? It's how can you become friends with your mind if you're trying to kill it with bad food, not so great company, drinking, drugging? It really doesn't work like that, right? If you want to become friends with your mind, you've got to give it good stuff. You've got to give it a better quality stuff in order to do that. Makes sense, right? So you're making healthier choices because you know it feels good and you want to feel good about yourself. You desire more balance and order in your life and the things that are happening. You want to finish tasks that you start. You like to feel good about doing something well for the sake of doing something well and skillfully, because you know that you can and you have the aptitude to do it, right? As you build your self-esteem and your confidence, you start to build on your skill sets. So self-esteem is Your self-esteem is crucial. You know, it drives a lot of things that you do in your life. Don't you think? Yeah. And let's face it, you're worth it. So you've got also healthier boundaries. You're better at saying no to all of those people that thought they could just walk all over you like a mat. And you're like, no, not doing that. That's not going to happen anymore. I have to tell you, I've mentioned this in one of my episodes about being a woman. Going through menopause, what a gift. What a gift. Because it became very clear with everything that this body was going through and lack of sleep on top of all of it. It felt so refreshing to say, no, not doing that. Why? Because it's not good for me. So, yeah, no. You know what I mean? You don't have to be bitchy about it, but you can say, no, that doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for you. Yeah, you can say it doesn't work for you. Thank you. No, thank you. Arrivederci. So you're making wiser choices for yourself, setting up healthier boundaries for yourself. You're able to see your mistakes without beating yourself up about it. You're able to look at yourself and go, yeah, okay, did that. Don't want to do that again. Not a great idea. Can do better next time because, after all, everybody's human here, right? Last time I checked, we're human and sometimes you make mistakes. And how else are you going to learn if you're not making mistakes and then rectifying them? So you have increased your level of self esteem, and you probably noticed that your values have probably also, like, your standards are getting higher. And why shouldn't they? They should, right? I'm not talking about, I know my pinky's up. I'm not talking about being highfalutin. I'm just saying making better choices for yourself gives you a better sense of self and self respect and self regard. So you've made yourself, you've gone from here and you're moving up. Yeah, you're moving up instead of just across. It's not a lateral move, it's a vertical move, really, when you think about it. And that's good. That's really good. So now where do you start? How do you start getting there? Right? You're like, "Oh, I just made a jump from here to here." Well, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when you get over there. So how do we get from here to there? How do we get there? You start with everyday practices. I talk about this all the time. Right? I'm constantly coming back to the basics because that's what it takes. It takes getting back to the basics. First place to start with, kindness. Being kind to yourself, being gentle and patient with yourself in this process and with the choices that you make around yourself, around how you relate to yourself. So you find yourself having that negative chatter and beating yourself up inside of your head. You take a step back and go, "Hmm, no, I challenge that. That's not true. True. I am a good person. Right? You start changing that narrative, challenge that narrative when it comes up for you. And sometimes it's hard to do because you don't know when this stuff is going to start to creep up on you. But if you make time to do this kind of work, you set time aside for yourself or catch it in the moment. It's the best way, right? You challenge that. That's not true. I am good at that and I'm going to get better at that. You can tell yourself, right? So you change those thoughts, that inner dialogue, right? In the last episode, I talked about this briefly before, journaling, affirming things about yourself that may not necessarily be true in the present moment, but you know you're going to get there. Like, let's say you're saying, I am. This is a practice that I love. I am. You can write, you're not so confident, right? I am confident. I am getting better at being confident every day. I am loved. I am valued. I am a good friend. I'm a good person. Start writing these things down about yourself. And I also talked about writing love letters to yourself, loving yourself in whatever state that you're in. Now, it'll help improve things for you, but write things that you want to really hear about yourself. Write it to yourself. Why not? And I bet that you will find yourself being drawn to people that will also start to see that in you. I've seen it happen in my own personal experiences. So changing that inner dialogue, saying no to people that are constantly, thinking they're going to get one over on you. We change that comparison thing. Take that out of your vocabulary. No comparing yourself to anyone else because it steals your joy. And it's not a very kind thing to do to yourself. Alrighty? Yeah. Also, it's very important because remember, you've already asked yourself those questions about people that you hang out with, your friends. Create a support team around you to help you shift your mindset. And that may mean that you get a therapist or you go see, if you're in school, you might see a school guidance counselor. Okay. But find yourself around people that are doing better than you, that you can learn from, and that can help you pick up better habits just by virtue of spending time with them. Right. And then see if you can find peer support groups around you. There's tons of stuff that you can access online. And if you need help, ask for it because it will be there and it may come to you in a way that you didn't even see coming. You didn't even know that that was possible. But put it out there and journal about the things that you want to do for yourself and that you want to get done. It's helpful to write it down. It makes things real. Okay? But find the support group that you need, and you may need to find new friends because you'll realize that life is short and you don't want to waste it. Again, it's a gift to be here. It's a gift to have a life. Okay. Also, you want to create better habits for yourself, right? Going to sleep at the same time every night if you can, and getting up at the same time every day, and getting enough sleep. Picking up habits that are going to help foster you getting enough rest because when you're tired, it's hard to make good decisions when you're exhausted, right? So get good rest. Again, be kind to yourself. It's important. It helps to support the rest of the process, right? You're getting healthier food in your system. You're getting exercise because you want to feel better. And you know that if you get some exercise, and take it easy if you haven't done it in a while, go easy with getting back into an exercise program. And if you've never done it before, go even easier. You don't want to hurt yourself. But do things, move your body, get outside, get some fresh air. We talk about this. Nature is a cure-all. I went outside today and I was listening to the birds sing. Literally, they were going bananas as I was leaving. Maybe they were happy I was leaving the forest. I don't think so. Maybe they were, but they were going crazy. And I turned around and I was just like, thank you. You just gave me a little symphony before I left. And believe it or not, this is uplifting. Nature baths are uplifting. So get outside in some kind of patch of nature somewhere and get some fresh air and move your body. And so what I'm going to finish off with here is I've been talking about the mind a lot. I'm going to talk about the nervous system. When you are developing new habits, you have to address the nervous system. The breath is very important, especially when you find yourself getting anxious listening to the news or watching it or scrolling on your phone on social media and getting more and more anxious as you start looking at things that you're just like, "Ugh." Your breath work is crucial. Okay, I did an entire episode on the breath and the mind, the qualities of your breath, and being mindful of how you are breathing throughout the day is key. Go to the breathing episode that I created and focus on your breath every day. If you can do it multiple times a day to establish diaphragmatic breathing, even better. It it brings you back into the present moment right away. And it reduces heart rate, it reduces blood pressure, it increases peripheral temperature because all of your blood vessels are dilating because they're relaxed. So do this especially if you feel like you're stressed out. Take 10, go somewhere and breathe. But definitely watch that video and you can skip to the instructions where I'm telling you exactly the qualities of the breath that you want to establish in order to get your parasympathetic nervous system. Always happens. Always happens. The parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. And it shifts the mind and it shifts everything in the body. It's God's loophole because there's no other way for you to control the autonomic nervous system except with the qualities of your breath. Now, how miraculous is that? It's pretty darn miraculous. Every time I think about it, every time I check in, because I do get stressed out, and what I've been finding myself coming back to is my breath. Coming back into the present moment and coming back to the breath. And once you start to find yourself getting some mastery over diaphragmatic breathing, then go into relaxation practices. Do relaxation practices. And then you may want to get into meditation. I highly recommend it. It's been life changing for me. When I tell you life changing, I'm not kidding. That's another subject, and I have talked about that as well. If you have questions about any of this, or if you want to share success stories that you've had with shifting your self esteem, please feel free to share. This is a safe space. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if you want to do it privately, you can DM me on Instagram. It's at BL Speaks, the same handle. I hope that this was helpful. I know I downloaded a lot of information. I hope that it was helpful. And I hope that you find a way to be inspired to get up in the morning and feel like you've got a reason to be here. You were born. So that's one reason. So what are you going to do with it? Because it is true that after 40, life speeds up. And then before you know it, poof, it's gone. So try to not let it get away from you because it's pretty magical to be alive. Alrighty. Thank you for stopping into BL Speaks as always. And please feel free to share. Take great care. Ciao.